Commander Sarah Chen pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the crashed shuttle, listening to the sounds outside. 3 days had passed since the emergency landing on Kepler 442b, and the rescue beacon was still silent. Her crew of 4 had become 3 when Jenkins didn't make it through the first night. Now something was stalking them. The planet had seemed peaceful enough during their initial survey. Rolling hills covered in purple vegetation, 2 moons hanging in the amber sky, and gravity just light enough to make walking feel like floating. The atmospheric readings showed breathable air with higher oxygen content than Earth. Everything pointed to a perfect candidate for human colonization. That was before they discovered they weren't alone. The first sign came during their second day of gathering samples. Dr. Martinez had been collecting soil specimens near a cluster of crystalline formations when he heard the howling. It wasn't like anything from Earth's animal kingdom. The sound carried an intelligence that made the hair on Sarah's neck stand up. Long, mournful calls that seemed to echo from multiple directions at once. "Commander, we should head back to the shuttle," Martinez had whispered, his hands shaking as he sealed the sample containers. Sarah agreed, but as they made their way through the dense purple undergrowth, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The sensation crawled along her spine like ice water. When she glanced over her shoulder, shadows seemed to move between the strange tree-like structures that dotted the landscape. Now, trapped in the shuttle's damaged hull, Sarah could hear them moving outside. Heavy footsteps circled the crash site, accompanied by low growls that vibrated through the metal walls. Whatever these creatures were, they were big, intelligent, and curious about the human visitors. "Commander," whispered Pilot Officer Reed from his position near the cracked viewport. "I can see one of them." Sarah crawled carefully across the tilted floor to join him. Through the spider-webbed transparasteel, she got her first clear look at their stalker. The creature stood nearly 7 feet tall on powerful hind legs, its body covered in thick dark fur that reflected the planet's binary sunset. The head was wolf-like but larger, with ears that twitched constantly as if picking up sounds beyond human hearing. Most striking were its eyes, not the yellow or amber she expected, but a deep blue that held unmistakable intelligence. "It's magnificent," breathed Dr. Martinez, joining them at the viewport despite Sarah's gesture to stay back. "Look at the muscle structure, the way it moves. This is definitely the apex predator of this ecosystem." The creature's head snapped toward the shuttle, and for a moment Sarah was certain it was looking directly at her. Those blue eyes seemed to peer straight through the damaged viewport and into her soul. She held her breath, not daring to move. Then the creature did something unexpected. It sat down, much like a domestic dog might, and tilted its head to one side. The aggressive posturing was gone, replaced by what almost looked like curiosity. It let out a soft woof sound, almost questioning. "Is it trying to communicate?" Reed asked, his voice barely audible. Before Sarah could respond, more howls echoed across the landscape. The seated creature's ears perked up, and it turned toward the sound. Sarah counted at least 5 different voices in that haunting chorus, maybe more. They were surrounded. The creature outside stood and began pacing again, but its movements were different now. Instead of the predatory stalking from before, it seemed almost protective, positioning itself between the shuttle and the direction of the other howls. "Commander," Martinez said suddenly, "I think we're looking at this all wrong. What if they're not hunting us? What if they're trying to protect us?" Sarah frowned. "Protect us from what?" Her question was answered by a new sound that made all 3 humans freeze. A mechanical whining filled the air, growing louder by the second. Through the viewport, they watched their wolf-like guardian's posture change completely. Its hackles rose and a low growl rumbled from its chest. The creature was clearly agitated by whatever was approaching. The whining sound resolved into the distinct hum of anti-gravity engines. Sarah's heart sank as she recognized the signature. Slavers. The Khazari Syndicate had found them. "How did they track us here?" Reed whispered, but Sarah already knew. The emergency beacon that was supposed to call for rescue had instead drawn the attention of the galaxy's most ruthless flesh traders. Humans were valuable cargo in the Outer Rim territories. The wolf creature outside began backing toward the shuttle, its attention fixed on the sky. More howls rose from the surrounding area, but these carried a different tone. Where before they had sounded curious or questioning, now they were clearly warning calls. A Khazari assault ship descended through the clouds, its sleek predatory shape cutting through the amber atmosphere like a knife. The ship was small but deadly, designed for quick raids on isolated settlements and disabled vessels. Sarah had seen the aftermath of their work before. Entire colonies stripped of their human populations, left as empty ghost towns under alien suns. The wolf creature let out a howl that made the shuttle's damaged hull vibrate. It was answered immediately by its pack, and Sarah realized she was about to witness something unprecedented. The indigenous predators of Kepler 442b were preparing to defend 3 stranded humans against alien slavers. "This is impossible," Martinez breathed. "How can they know we need help?" Sarah didn't have an answer, but she was beginning to understand that these creatures were far more intelligent than any initial scans had suggested. As the Kozari ship settled into a landing pattern 100 meters away, the wolf outside positioned itself directly in the craft's path. The ship's boarding ramps extended with mechanical precision, and Sarah caught her first glimpse of the Kozari raiders. Tall insectoid beings in environmental suits, they moved with the efficient grace of professional predators. Energy weapons gleamed in their clawed hands as they advanced across the purple landscape. The lead Kozari stopped when it spotted the wolf creature standing between them and the shuttle. Sarah saw it gesture to its companions, apparently amused by this unexpected obstacle. One of the raiders raised its weapon. That was when the wolf attacked. The wolf creature moved faster than Sarah thought possible for something so large. One moment it was sitting calmly between the shuttle and the Kozari raiders. The next it was airborne, covering the distance in a single powerful leap. The lead raider's weapon discharged into empty air as 7 feet of muscle and fury crashed into its chest. The Kozari went down hard, its insectoid limbs flailing as the wolf's jaws clamped around its weapon arm. The energy rifle skittered across the purple ground, sparking where it struck the crystalline formations. The creature's attack was precise, calculated. It wasn't trying to kill, but to disarm and disable. "Incredible," Martinez whispered from the viewport. "Look at the tactical awareness. It knows exactly where to strike for maximum effect." More wolves emerged from the purple undergrowth like living shadows. Sarah counted at least 8 of them, moving in coordinated patterns that spoke of pack intelligence and communication, far beyond anything seen in Earth's animal kingdom. They flanked the remaining Kozari raiders with military precision, cutting off escape routes and forcing the slavers into a defensive circle. The Kozari leader, a massive specimen nearly 8 feet tall with elaborate scarification covering its carapace, barked orders in its harsh native language. The raiders formed up quickly, energy weapons raised and ready. These weren't amateurs. The Kozari syndicate recruited only the most experienced killers for their slaving operations. But the wolves were ready too. They moved like a single organism, each creature perfectly positioned to support its packmates. When the Kozari opened fire, the wolves scattered with supernatural grace, their dark forms weaving between energy bolts that turned patches of vegetation into smoldering craters. The lead wolf, the one that had first approached the shuttle, let out a series of short barks that were immediately answered by its pack. Sarah watched in amazement as the wolves adjusted their positions in response to these vocal commands. Whatever language they used, it was complex enough to coordinate real-time battle tactics. "Commander," Reed said urgently, "the Kozari are trying to flank around to the shuttle's rear access port. If they get inside..." Sarah knew what he meant. Kozari slavers preferred to take their prey alive when possible. Humans in good condition brought better prices in the rim markets. But they wouldn't hesitate to use neural disruptors or paralytic gas if their targets proved troublesome. The largest wolf seemed to sense the flanking maneuver as well. It broke from the main engagement, racing along the shuttle's perimeter to intercept the 2 Kozari moving toward the rear. Its speed was breathtaking, covering ground in bounds that took it over obstacles like they weren't even there. One of the flanking raiders spotted the approaching threat and pivoted, bringing its weapon to bear. The energy bolt struck the wolf's center mass and Sarah's heart stopped. But instead of dropping, the creature merely stumbled, its thick fur smoking but its momentum barely checked. It slammed into the Kozari with bone-crushing force, sending both figures tumbling into a cluster of crystal formations. "How is it still moving?" Reed asked in disbelief. That was a direct hit from a military-grade energy weapon. Dr. Martinez was studying the wolf through the viewport with scientific fascination. "Look at the fur texture, the way it's reflecting light. I think there might be some kind of natural electromagnetic resistance in their coat." Evolution in a high-radiation environment could produce that kind of adaptation. The battle outside continued to rage, but it was clear the Khazari were outmatched. Their superior technology meant nothing against opponents who seemed to anticipate every move, who communicated with perfect clarity, and who showed no fear of their energy weapons. One by one, the raiders found themselves disarmed, surrounded, or simply overwhelmed by creatures that fought with the coordination of a special forces unit. The Khazari leader realized the futility of the situation and activated something on its belt. Sarah recognized the emergency extraction signal, just as the assault ship's engines began spinning up. The slavers were cutting their losses, but the wolves weren't finished. As the remaining Khazari began falling back toward their ship, the pack moved to prevent their escape. They didn't attack directly. Instead, they positioned themselves to force the raiders into an increasingly narrow corridor, herding them like sheep away from their vessel. The lead wolf, now sporting several burned patches in its dark fur, approached the Khazari leader directly. The two apex predators faced each other across 10 feet of scorched purple ground, neither moving. Sarah held her breath, waiting for the final confrontation. Instead, the wolf did something that made Sarah question everything she thought she knew about alien intelligence. It sat down again, just as it had when first observing the shuttle, and made a sound that was unmistakably dismissive. A huffing noise that somehow conveyed exactly what any human would hear. Get lost. The Khazari leader's compound eyes glittered with what might have been respect or frustration. It barked another order, and the remaining raiders began moving toward their ship in an orderly retreat. The wolves let them go but maintained their positions, making it clear that any deviation from a direct path to the assault craft would result in renewed hostilities. Within minutes, the Khazari ship was lifting off, its anti-grav engines whining as it climbed toward orbit. The wolves watched until it disappeared beyond the cloud layer, then turned their attention back to the crashed shuttle. Sarah found herself looking into those intelligent blue eyes again, as the lead wolf approached the viewport. Up close, she could see details that made her scientific training rebel against what she was witnessing. The creature's facial structure showed signs of tool use, wear patterns around the mouth that suggested manipulation of objects. Its posture and movement spoke of self-awareness that went far beyond instinctual behavior. The wolf tilted its head and made a soft sound, almost like a question. When Sarah didn't respond, it tried again, this time with a different inflection. It was trying to communicate, she realized. Not just making noise, but attempting actual language. It wants something, Martinez said quietly. But what? Sarah made a decision that would have gotten her court-martialed under normal circumstances. She moved to the shuttle's emergency airlock and began the manual override sequence. Reed grabbed her arm. Commander, you can't be serious. We don't know anything about these creatures. They could be territorial, protective of their young, anything. They just saved our lives, Sarah replied, continuing her work on the airlock controls. I think we owe them the courtesy of a proper introduction. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere. The lead wolf stepped back but didn't retreat, watching as Sarah emerged into the alien evening. The two moons were rising, casting everything in silver and blue light that made the creature's fur shimmer like liquid shadow. For a long moment, human and alien simply looked at each other. Then Sarah did something that felt completely natural, despite the impossibility of the situation. She extended her hand, palm open, the universal gesture of peaceful intent. The wolf looked at her hand, then back to her face, then did something that would change humanity's understanding of intelligence in the universe forever. It extended one massive paw and gently placed it against her palm. The moment the wolf's paw touched Sarah's palm, something extraordinary happened. A warmth spread up her arm that had nothing to do with temperature, and images flashed through her mind. Not her own memories, but something else entirely. She saw the purple landscape from a different perspective, smelled scents her human nose couldn't detect, heard sounds beyond her audible range. For just an instant, she experienced the world through alien senses. The wolf pulled its paw back and made a sound that was unmistakably surprised. Its blue eyes widened and it stepped back, looking at Sarah with what she could only interpret as wonder. Whatever had just happened, it had affected the creature too. Commander, Reed's voice came from the shuttle's airlock, tight with concern. Your bio readings just spiked. Heart rate, brain activity, everything. Sarah ignored him, focused entirely on the magnificent being before her. The wolf was studying her with an intensity that made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. Then it did something that made her scientific training do backflips. It pointed at itself with one clawed digit, made a complex sound, then pointed at her and tilted its head in obvious question. It was asking for her name. "Sarah," she said, pointing to herself. The simple human word felt inadequate in the face of such intelligence. The wolf repeated the sound, mangling the pronunciation but clearly attempting to mimic her vocalization. Then it pointed to itself again and made the same complex sound as before, slower this time, as if teaching pronunciation to a slow student. Sarah tried to repeat it and failed completely. Human vocal cords simply weren't designed for the range of tones and harmonics the creature was producing. The wolf seemed to understand this limitation and made a different sound, simpler but still carrying multiple tonal qualities. "Gray," Sarah said suddenly, the closest human approximation she could manage. The creature's coloring was actually much more complex, shifting from deep charcoal to silver depending on the light. But the simplified name seemed to satisfy it. Gray nodded, a gesture so human-like that Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Then it turned and let out a series of barks toward the other wolves scattered around the crash site. The response was immediate and coordinated. The pack began moving closer, but their approach was careful, non-threatening. Dr. Martinez emerged from the shuttle despite Reed's protests, his scientific curiosity overriding his survival instincts. "Commander, this is unprecedented. We're witnessing first contact with a sapient species. The linguistic complexity alone." Gray's attention shifted to Martinez, and the creature repeated the pointing gesture it had used with Sarah. Martinez caught on quickly, introducing himself with the same protocol Sarah had established. The wolf seemed pleased by this development, making soft sounds that might have been approval. Over the next hour, a remarkable scene unfolded in the shadow of the crashed shuttle. More wolves approached, each introducing themselves with unique vocal signatures that Sarah's human ears could barely distinguish. Martinez was frantically taking notes on a salvage tablet, documenting every interaction for posterity. "Look at the social structure," he whispered to Sarah during a brief lull. "Gray is clearly the pack leader, but watch how they defer to this smaller one with the white markings. I think we're seeing a hierarchy based on knowledge or experience, not just physical dominance." The white-marked wolf Martinez had identified was indeed receiving special treatment from the others. It was older, Sarah realized, with gray threading through its fur and a bearing that spoke of wisdom. When it approached Sarah, its movements were deliberate and careful. This elder wolf did something none of the others had attempted. It placed both paws on the ground, lowered its massive head, and made a sound that resonated through the crystal formations around the crash site. The other wolves immediately adopted similar postures. "It's a greeting ceremony," Sarah breathed. "They're showing respect." But as she moved to reciprocate the gesture, the elder wolf raised its head and fixed her with a stare that seemed to pierce her soul. Those ancient blue eyes held depths of knowledge that made Sarah feel like a child. When the creature spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to vibrate in her bones, and impossibly Sarah understood. Not the words themselves, but the meaning behind them. Images formed in her mind, concepts that transcended language. The elder was telling her something about the Kozari, about other ships that would come, about dangers that lurked in the spaces between stars. The vision was fragmentary, but terrifying. She saw massive vessels descending from the sky, saw energy weapons turning entire landscapes into glass, saw creatures like Gray and his pack fleeing into deep caves and hidden places. The Kozari weren't just slavers. They were part of something larger, more organized and infinitely more dangerous. When the connection ended, Sarah staggered backward, her mind reeling from the information download. The elder wolf watched her with knowing eyes, waiting for understanding to dawn. "Commander," Reed called from the shuttle, "I'm picking up energy signatures on the long-range sensors. Multiple contacts approaching fast." Sarah's blood turned to ice. The Kozari weren't giving up. They'd called for reinforcements. Gray seemed to sense her distress and moved to her side, pressing his massive bulk against her leg in a gesture of comfort and support. The other wolves were already responding to some unheard command, spreading out to form defensive positions around the shuttle. But this time would be different. Sarah could see it in the distant sky, where stars were being blotted out by the bulk of approaching ships. Not just one assault craft, but an entire raiding fleet. The kind of force the Kozari deployed when they wanted to strip mine an entire world of its resources. The elder wolf approached Sarah again and placed one ancient paw on her arm. The contact brought another surge of alien thoughts, but these were different. Not warnings this time, but something else. Knowledge. Coordinates. The location of something hidden deep beneath the planet's surface. Sarah gasped as she realized what the elder was showing her. This world wasn't just home to intelligent wolves. It was the site of something far older, something that the Kozari would kill to possess and the wolves had spent generations protecting. "We have to get underground," Sarah said urgently. "There's something here, something important." "The wolves have been guarding it." Gray barked once sharply, and the pack began moving with military precision. They weren't retreating, Sarah realized. They were escorting the humans to whatever lay hidden beneath Kepler 442b's surface. Martinez grabbed his sample cases, while Reed secured what remained of their communications equipment. As they prepared to abandon the shuttle, Sarah took one last look at the approaching lights in the sky. The Kozari fleet was massive, enough firepower to reduce the crash site to atoms, but the wolves weren't afraid. If anything, they seemed almost eager, as if this confrontation had been inevitable. Gray looked back at Sarah, and in those intelligent blue eyes she saw something that made her heart race with possibility. The wolves hadn't just been protecting their world from the Kozari. They'd been waiting for something, for someone, for allies who could help them turn the tide in a war that had been fought in shadow for longer than human civilization had existed. As the pack led them toward a hidden entrance between the crystal formations, Sarah realized that humanity's first contact with alien intelligence was about to become something far more significant. They weren't just witnesses to an interstellar conflict. They were about to become players in it. The entrance to the underground complex was hidden so well that Sarah would have walked past it a dozen times without noticing. What appeared to be natural crystal formations shifted aside at Gray's approach, revealing a passage that descended into blue-lit darkness. The technology was seamless, so advanced that it seemed like magic. "Impossible," Martinez whispered as they followed the wolves into the tunnel. "Those crystals moved like they were alive. I've never seen anything like it." The passage walls were lined with the same crystalline material, but now Sarah could see that it wasn't natural at all. The geometric patterns were too precise, the luminescence too uniform. They were walking through a structure that predated human civilization by millennia. Gray led them deeper, his massive form moving with easy familiarity through corridors that branched and intersected in patterns that hurt Sarah's head to contemplate. The other wolves had spread out, some taking alternate routes, others following behind to cover their retreat. Despite the complex layout, every member of the pack seemed to know exactly where they were going. "Commander?" Reed said softly, adjusting his scanner readings. "I'm detecting massive energy sources ahead. Whatever's down here, it's still active." The elder wolf appeared beside Sarah as if materializing from the shadows. When it placed a paw on her shoulder, she felt the now familiar surge of alien communication. Images flooded her mind, showing her the history of this place in flashes of understanding. She saw the world as it had been eons ago, home to a civilization that had reached heights humanity couldn't imagine. Beings of pure energy and thought who had built wonders that spanned star systems. She saw the arrival of the first Kozari scouts, the beginning of a war that had raged across the galaxy for thousands of years. The Builders, as the Elder Wolf's thoughts named them, had been forced to abandon their physical forms to survive the Kozari onslaught. But they hadn't fled. Instead, they had hidden themselves in constructs like this one, waiting for species with the potential to stand against their enemies. The passage opened into a vast chamber that took Sarah's breath away. The space was enormous, easily a kilometer across, filled with floating islands of crystal connected by bridges of hardened light. Each island supported structures that defied physics as humans understood it. Spiraling towers and impossible geometries that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. And everywhere, wolves moved through the complex like they owned it, which Sarah was beginning to realize they did. In a sense, they're the guardians, she said aloud, understanding flooding through her. The Builders chose them, modified them, made them the caretakers of this place. Gray padded up beside her and made a sound of confirmation. Then he led them across one of the light bridges toward a central island, where something that might have been a command center waited. The structure pulsed with inner light, responding to the wolves' presence as they approached. When Gray placed a paw on what looked like a control surface, holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing tactical information that made Sarah's military training snap to attention. "Those are ship positions," Reed said in amazement, studying the three-dimensional display. The entire Kozari fleet mapped in real time. "How is this possible?" Martinez was practically vibrating with excitement as he examined the technology. "The detection range is incredible. They're tracking vessels across half the star system. This makes our best military sensors look like children's toys." But Sarah was focused on the numbers. 57 Kozari vessels in the immediate area, with more arriving every hour. Battle cruisers, assault ships, and something massive that the display marked with symbols she couldn't read, but which radiated menace even through the hologram. "We can't fight that," she said quietly. "Even with this technology, it's too much." The elder wolf appeared beside the display and touched another control surface. The view changed, pulling back to show the entire star system, then the local cluster, then a map of the galaxy that showed points of light scattered across the spiral arms. Each point was another facility like this one, hundreds of them, thousands, all connected in a network that spanned known space. And at each location, the same pattern repeated: guardian species, chosen and enhanced by the builders, protecting caches of technology that could tip the balance of power. "It's a resistance network," Sarah breathed. "The builders have been organizing resistance to the Kozari for millennia." Gray nodded and activated another display, this one showing historical data. Sarah watched in fascination as the hologram played out centuries of conflict. She saw worlds fall to the Kozari, their populations enslaved or worse. But she also saw victories: Kozari fleets destroyed by guardian species wielding builder technology, slaves liberated and sent to hidden sanctuaries. The war had never ended. It had simply moved to a scale too vast for any single species to comprehend. Until now, Reed was studying the tactical display with growing alarm. "Commander, the Kozari fleet is moving. They're not just orbiting anymore. They're deploying for planetary bombardment." The display confirmed his observation. The massive flagship was positioning itself for a direct assault on the surface, its weapon systems charging for what could only be a world-killing strike. The Kozari weren't planning to capture the planet anymore. They were going to sterilize it. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Humanity had stumbled into a conflict that predated their species, and now they were at the center of what might be a decisive battle. The knowledge and technology of the builders, the courage and dedication of the wolves, and the arrival of humans at this crucial moment couldn't be coincidence. "Show me how to help," she said to Gray, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was asking. The wolf leader studied her for a long moment, those intelligent blue eyes seeming to weigh her soul. Then he placed a paw on her hand and guided it to the primary control interface. The moment her fingers touched the crystal surface, Sarah's consciousness exploded outward. She could suddenly perceive the entire network, feel the presence of guardian species on 1,000 worlds, sense the flow of information and energy that connected them all. The sensation was overwhelming, alien thoughts and memories flooding through her human mind. But underneath the chaos, she felt something else: recognition, welcome. The builder network had been waiting for humanity, she realized, waiting for a species with the right combination of intelligence, aggression, and adaptability to serve as coordinators for the final phase of the war. "The Kozari think they're hunting one isolated world," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that weren't quite human. "They have no idea what they've walked into." Martinez and Reed watched in amazement as Sarah interfaced with technology that seemed to respond to her thoughts. Around them, the wolves took up positions at various control stations, their enhanced intelligence allowing them to serve as living components in a system designed by beings of incomprehensible knowledge. The tactical display shifted again, this time showing not just the Kozari fleet, but response forces moving through hyperspace toward their location, ships that looked nothing like human or Kozari vessels, crewed by guardian species from dozens of worlds, all converging on Kepler 442b with one purpose. "How many?" Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure if she spoke aloud or simply thought the question into the network. The answer came as pure data injected directly into her consciousness. 347 ships representing 23 guardian species, armed with builder technology that the Khazari had never encountered in full deployment. The final battle for galactic freedom was about to begin, and humanity would stand at its center, allied with wolves who had gained their trust through courage and sacrifice. Gray let out a howl that echoed through the chamber and beyond. Carried by the network to guardian species across the galaxy, it was a sound of triumph and determination, a battle cry that had been building for thousands of years. The Khazari wanted a war. Now they were going to get one. The first Guardian fleet emerged from hyperspace like an avenging storm. Sarah watched through the network's sensors as ships of impossible design translated into normal space around Kepler 442b, their arrival creating ripples in spacetime that the Khazari sensors couldn't have missed. The enemy fleet's response was immediate and predictable. Battle formations spread across local space as the Khazari prepared to face what they assumed would be another isolated Guardian species with limited technology. They had no idea they were looking at the combined might of the oldest resistance network in the galaxy. "Commander," Reed said, his voice tight with awe. "The energy readings from those Guardian ships are off the charts. Each one is generating power equivalent to a small star." Sarah barely heard him. Her consciousness was distributed across the network now. Experiencing the battle from multiple perspectives simultaneously, she could feel the anticipation of Valnak hunters from the Crimson Nebula, taste the electromagnetic fury of the crystalline shepherds from Beyond 7, sense the cold calculation of the Machine Collective from the void between. All of them were here because of Gray and his pack, because a group of enhanced wolves on a distant world had chosen to trust 3 stranded humans instead of letting them die in the crash. The Khazari flagship began its bombardment pattern, massive energy weapons charging for a planet-killing strike. Sarah felt the network respond like a single organism, Guardian fleets moving to intercept positions while defensive systems came online across hundreds of worlds. But the Khazari had made a critical error. They thought they were facing a primitive world defended by animals. Instead, they had walked into the trap the Builder Network had been preparing for millennia. "Now," Sarah said, her voice carrying the authority of the collective. Gray howled his agreement, and the chamber around them exploded into activity. The crystal formations throughout the facility began resonating at frequencies that made reality itself seem to bend. Energy coursed through pathways that existed in dimensions humans couldn't perceive, and Sarah felt the planet's crust shifting as massive defensive systems awakened after eons of slumber. The first sign the Khazari received that something was wrong came when their bombardment weapons simply stopped working. Energy beams that should have cracked continents dissipated harmlessly against barriers of crystallized space-time that the Builder Network projected around Kepler 442b, or the second sign was the appearance of the planetary defense grid. Weapons platforms that had been hidden beneath the planet's crust rose through solid rock like it was water, their builder technology allowing them to phase through matter without disturbing it. Within minutes, dozens of installations were targeting the Khazari fleet with weapons that could crack moons. "Impossible," Reed whispered, watching the tactical display. "Those platforms are firing coherent gravity waves. They're literally crushing Khazari ships with weaponized space-time." The Guardian fleets pressed their advantage, engaging the confused Khazari formations with coordinated precision that spoke of thousands of years of planning. Sarah watched Valnak hunters phase through Khazari shields like they weren't there, while crystalline shepherds turned entire enemy vessels into diamond dust with focused harmonic resonance. But the Khazari weren't defenseless. Their technology was brutal and effective, and they had numerical superiority in the local area. The battle quickly became a grinding slugfest as both sides committed their reserves. Through it all, Gray and the other wolves maintained their positions at the control interfaces, their enhanced minds serving as living processors for builder systems, too complex for any single organic brain to comprehend. Sarah realized that this was what the wolves had been bred for, not just guardianship but active participation in a war that spanned the galaxy. The tide of battle shifted when the Khazari flagship revealed its true purpose. The massive vessel wasn't just a command ship, it was a dimensional gateway, a portal through which reinforcements could pour from the Khazari home territories. As Sarah watched in horror, The ship's hull split open to reveal a swirling vortex of dark energy. "They're bringing in a conquest fleet," she said, the network feeding her tactical data faster than her human mind could process. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. The first Kozari reinforcements began emerging from the portal, fresh battle cruisers and assault ships that immediately moved to envelope the Guardian forces. For a moment, it seemed like the ancient plan was about to fail, crushed under the weight of overwhelming numbers. That was when humanity made its first real contribution to the war. Sarah had been thinking like a military commander, focused on tactics and strategy. But Martinez had been thinking like a scientist, studying the portal's energy signature and the dimensional mechanics that made it possible. While the battle raged around them, he had been quietly working at one of the subsidiary control stations. "Commander," he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I think I found something. The portal's stabilization matrix has a fatal flaw. It's designed to prevent internal collapse, but if we can generate a precise harmonic resonance at the quantum level..." Sarah felt the implications crash through the network like lightning. The builder technology could do what Martinez was suggesting, but it would require coordination between multiple facilities and perfect timing. One mistake would tear a hole in space-time that could swallow the entire star system. "Do it," she said without hesitation. Gray turned to look at her, his blue eyes reflecting depths of trust that transcended species. Then he threw back his head and howled, a sound that carried across the network to every Guardian installation in the galaxy. The response was immediate and unanimous. From 1,000 worlds, builder facilities began focusing their power on a single point in space above Kepler 442b. Energy that had been stored for eons flowed through pathways that existed outside normal physics, converging on the Kozari portal with surgical precision. The harmonic resonance that Martinez had calculated began building, invisible forces working at the quantum level to destabilize the portal's matrix. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the gateway began to fluctuate, its dark energy writhing like a living thing. The Kozari realized what was happening and tried desperately to shut down the portal, but it was too late. The resonance cascade was already building beyond their ability to control. Energy feedback began surging back through the gateway, and Sarah could sense panic spreading through the enemy fleet. When the portal collapsed, it took half the Kozari flagship with it. The massive vessel, caught between dimensions, simply ceased to exist from the perspective of normal space-time. The reinforcements still in transit were lost in the dimensional void, their screams echoing across frequencies that no organic ear could hear. The surviving Kozari fleet tried to regroup, but their morale was shattered. They had come to crush a primitive world, and instead found themselves facing technology they couldn't understand, wielded by species they had dismissed as animals. Guardian fleets pressed their advantage, driving the slavers back toward the edge of the system. But Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The network had revealed itself, and the Kozari would respond with everything they had. The ancient war was about to enter a new phase, with humanity as the catalyst that would determine its outcome. Gray approached her as the immediate battle wound down, his massive form moving with the careful grace of a predator who had found worthy allies. When he placed his paw on her hand, the communication that flowed between them was different now. Not the tentative contact of first meeting, but the deep understanding of packmates who had fought together. In that moment, Sarah understood what the Elder Wolf had been trying to tell her from the beginning. The wolves hadn't just been protecting this world. They had been waiting for the species that would help them take the fight to the enemy. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, allied with ancient guardians in a war for the freedom of all sapient life, and it was only just beginning. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, Sarah stood in the command center of what had once been humanity's most advanced starship. The ESC Prometheus had been retrofitted with builder technology, its human systems integrated with crystalline matrices that made it more than the sum of its parts. The ship itself had become a living extension of the Guardian network. Gray padded beside her, his massive form now a familiar sight on the bridge. The wolf had refused to be separated from Sarah after the battle, and the network had confirmed what she already suspected. They were bonded now, partners in a way that transcended species. The other crew members had adapted quickly to their alien ally, though Martinez still spent hours studying Gray's enhanced physiology. "Status report," Sarah requested, settling into the captain's chair that had been modified to accommodate Gray's presence beside her. Lieutenant Commander Torres, her new tactical officer, consulted displays that mixed human interface design with builder symbology. Guardian fleets report ready status across 17 sectors. The Khazari have pulled back to fortified positions around their core worlds, but long-range reconnaissance shows they're massing for a counterattack. The war had escalated beyond anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. The revelation of the Guardian network had forced the Khazari to abandon their strategy of picking off isolated worlds. Now it was open warfare, with battles raging across hundreds of star systems as ancient enemies finally faced each other without pretense. Humanity had found itself at the center of it all, not because they were the strongest or most advanced species, but because they possessed something unique, the ability to coordinate the network's diverse members. Human adaptability and tactical thinking complemented the specialized strengths of the other Guardian species, creating a unified command structure that the Khazari couldn't predict or counter. "Any word from the Valnak expedition?" Sarah asked. "They've established contact with the hive worlds in Sector 7, Torres reported. 3 more species have agreed to join the network. The Khazari are starting to lose their grip on the Outer Rim territories. It was a slow process, liberating worlds that had been under Khazari control for centuries. But each victory brought new allies and the network grew stronger. The wolves from Kepler 442b had become ambassadors of sorts, their natural empathy and pack intelligence making them ideal for first contact situations with traumatized populations." Gray's ears perked up, and he let out a soft woof that Sarah had learned to recognize as a warning. A moment later, the ship's sensors confirmed his alert. Something was approaching through hyperspace, moving faster than anything in the Guardian database. "All stations, alert status," Sarah ordered. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but there was tension in the air. After months of warfare, everyone knew that the Khazari were capable of unpleasant surprises. The contact emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, and Sarah felt her breath catch. It wasn't a Khazari vessel. It was something entirely new, sleek and organic-looking, with energy signatures that made the ship's builder-enhanced sensors sing with harmonic resonance. Gray stood suddenly, his hackles rising, but his posture wasn't aggressive. He was excited, Sarah realized. Whatever this ship was, it represented something he had been waiting for. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer reported. It's using builder protocols, but the encryption is unlike anything in the database." "Put it through," Sarah ordered. The view screen flickered, and Sarah found herself looking at a being that took her breath away. Humanoid, but clearly not human, with features that seemed to shift and flow like living crystal. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that resonated in dimensions her mind couldn't grasp. "Greetings. Guardian Network," the being said, its words somehow translating directly into concepts rather than language. "I am Kyriel of the Firstborn, and we bring word from the Deep Archive." Gray let out a howl that carried frequencies Sarah had never heard before, and across the network she felt a response from Guardian species on dozens of worlds. The wolves weren't the only ones who recognized this being. The Firstborn were the original builders, Sarah realized, the beings who had created the network in the first place, who had supposedly ascended beyond physical existence eons ago. But here one stood, as real as anything else in the universe. "The network has performed admirably," Kyriel continued, "but the time of hidden warfare is ending. The Khazari have activated their ultimate weapon, and the galaxy faces extinction if they cannot be stopped." The tactical display updated with new information that made Sarah's heart sink. Deep in Khazari space, something massive was taking shape. A construct the size of a small moon, built from technologies that predated the builder network itself. Energy readings suggested it was capable of sterilizing entire star systems, turning living worlds into dead rock. "The Void Engine," Kyriel said, noting their horrified expressions. "A weapon from the time before time, when the universe was young and cruel being sought to reshape reality according to their desires. The Khazari have spent millennia excavating it from the ruins of the predecessor civilization. How do we stop it?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "The only way such weapons can be defeated," Kyriel replied, "with unity. Every Guardian species, every world in the network, every ship and warrior committed to a single coordinated assault. The Khazari expect us to nibble at the edges of their empire forever. Instead, we will strike at its heart. Gray moved to the main tactical console and placed his paws on the control interface. The network responded immediately, and Sarah felt the presence of thousands of species across the galaxy, all turning their attention to this moment. The plan that formed in the collective consciousness was audacious beyond belief. A direct assault on the Khazari homeworld, using the entire strength of the Guardian network in a single overwhelming attack. The risks are enormous, Martinez said, studying the tactical projections. If we fail, the network will be broken and the Khazari will have free reign across the galaxy. If we don't try, the Void Engine will ensure the galaxy dies anyway, Sarah replied. At least this way we go down fighting. Cariel's crystalline features shifted in what might have been approval. Spoken like a true guardian, the Firstborn will provide what assistance we can, but the battle itself must be fought by those who still maintain physical form. The Builders learned long ago that there are some struggles that require flesh and blood to resolve. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Ships from across the galaxy converged on rally points in neutral space, species that had never met before working together to integrate their technologies and tactics. Humanity found itself serving as the coordination hub for an alliance that spanned evolutionary trees beyond counting. Gray rarely left Sarah's side during the planning phase, but she noticed he was spending more time in communication with the network. When she asked about it through their empathic bond, the images he shared showed her packs of enhanced wolves on dozens of worlds, all preparing for something that felt different from ordinary battle. The truth became clear as the Guardian fleet approached Khazari space. The wolves weren't just participants in the coming battle, they were its heart. Their pack intelligence and empathic abilities made them the perfect coordinators for a conflict that would require split-second coordination across light years of space. Final approach to target system, Torres reported. Khazari defenses are activating. We're looking at everything they have left concentrated in one place. The enemy fleet was vast, more ships than Sarah had ever seen in one place. But the Guardian force was vaster still, a collection of vessels representing every major spacefaring species in the galaxy. And at its center, enhanced wolves from 100 worlds served as living links in a coordination network that would either save civilization or die trying. All units. This is Guardian Prime, Sarah announced on the fleet-wide channel. Today we end a war that has lasted longer than any of our civilizations. Today we prove that unity is stronger than tyranny, that cooperation defeats exploitation. For freedom, for the future, for every species that dreams of a galaxy without fear. Attack. The largest space battle in galactic history began with a howl that echoed across the void, as Gray and his enhanced kin coordinated an assault that would be remembered until the stars themselves burned out. The Battle of Khazari Prime raged for 3 standard days, and when it was over, the galaxy was forever changed. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus, watching as the last Khazari defense platforms fell silent around their dying homeworld. The Void Engine, that terrible weapon that could have ended all life in the galaxy, drifted as lifeless scrap metal among the debris of the fleet that had protected it. Gray sat beside her, his blue eyes reflecting the light of alien stars, both of them bearing the scars of a conflict that had tested every limit of courage and endurance. The victory had come at a price. Of the 1,000 Guardian ships that had entered the system, fewer than half remained functional. Entire species had sacrificed themselves to breach the Khazari defenses, their final acts of heroism ensuring that others could reach the Void Engine before it could be activated. The network felt smaller now, diminished by the loss of so many voices, but stronger for the bonds forged in shared struggle. Status report from the surface, Torres announced from behind them. The Liberation Forces have secured the main slave processing centers. Early estimates suggest over 1 million beings freed, representing dozens of species. Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and profound sadness. 1 million liberated souls was a victory beyond measure. But how many more had died in the centuries of Khazari oppression? How many species had been lost entirely? Their unique contributions to galactic civilization erased forever. Gray whined softly and pressed against her leg, offering comfort through their empathic bond. The wolf understood her grief, shared it even, but he also projected something else. Hope for the future that they had fought to secure. The liberation of the Khazari slave worlds was already underway, coordinated by guardian fleets that spread across the former empire like seeds of freedom. Some liberated species would need generations to recover from their trauma, while others were already volunteering to join the network. The galaxy was healing, but it would be a long process. Commander Chen, a familiar voice called from the deck entrance. Sarah turned to see Dr. Martinez approaching, but he wasn't alone. Beside him walked a figure that made her breath catch. Kyriel of the Firstborn, the crystalline being who had provided crucial intelligence about the Void Engine. The Deep Archive has been recording the events of these past months, Kyriel said, its harmonic voice carrying overtones of satisfaction. The integration of humanity into the Guardian network has exceeded all projections. Your species' adaptability and coordination abilities have proven to be exactly what the galaxy needed. We couldn't have done it without Gray and his people, Sarah replied, placing a hand on the wolf's massive head. They taught us that intelligence comes in many forms, and that trust is the foundation of all cooperation. Gray's tail wagged once, a thoroughly canine gesture that never failed to amuse the bridge crew. Despite his enhanced intelligence and cosmic importance, he was still fundamentally a pack animal who valued simple expressions of affection. Indeed, Kyriel agreed. The Builders chose well when they selected this species for enhancement. Their empathic abilities and pack intelligence proved crucial to network coordination. But the integration with humanity created something unprecedented, a hybrid command structure that no enemy could predict or counter. Martinez stepped forward, his scientific curiosity evident despite the exhaustion of the past weeks. What happens now? With the Khazari threat ended, will the network continue to exist? Kyriel's crystalline features shifted in what might have been amusement. Dr. Martinez, the Khazari were merely the most immediate threat. The galaxy is vast and ancient, full of dangers that dwarf even their empire. The network will continue because it must, as a shield against the darkness between stars and a beacon for species that haven't yet learned to reach for the light. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. There are other threats out there? Worse than the Khazari? Much worse, Kyriel confirmed. Entities that predate the formation of galaxies. Machines that consume entire stellar clusters. Beings of pure entropy that seek to return the universe to primordial chaos. The Khazari were cruel and destructive, but they were still fundamentally biological entities driven by understandable motives. What lurks in the deep void? Those are true horrors. Gray let out a low growl, but it wasn't directed at Kyriel. The wolf was sensing something through the network. Some distant disturbance that made his enhanced instincts trigger warning signals. How soon? Sarah asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be comforting. Soon enough, Kyriel replied. But not today, not tomorrow. The galaxy has time to heal, to grow stronger, to welcome new species into the network, and humanity will be at the center of that growth, serving as the coordinators for an alliance that spans not just this galaxy, but others beyond the void. The implications were staggering. Sarah had thought the war against the Khazari was the fight of her lifetime, but it was apparently just the first movement in a symphony of conflict that would span eons. Humanity had gone from a single planet species to galactic coordinators in less than a year, and now they were being told their real work was just beginning. But as she looked around the observation deck, seeing human and alien crew members working together with the easy familiarity of a well-trained unit, Sarah felt a surge of confidence. If the past months had taught her anything, it was that no challenge was insurmountable when faced with unity and determination. Gray stood and padded over to the large viewport that dominated the observation deck. Outside, guardian ships from dozens of species were beginning their dispersal to home territories, but many were choosing to remain in mixed flotillas, continuing the cooperation that had won the war. The wolf placed his paws against the transparent aluminum and let out a soft howl that carried harmonics only the enhanced could produce. The sound was picked up by wolves on other ships, amplified through the network and spread across the galaxy in a message that transcended language. It spoke of sacrifice and victory, of bonds forged in battle and trust earned through courage. But most of all, it spoke of hope for a future where no species would face the darkness alone. Sarah joined Gray at the viewport, placing her hand on his shoulder as she had that first day on Kepler 442b, when everything changed. Through their bond, she felt the vast presence of the network, millions of beings across thousands of worlds, all connected by a shared commitment to protect the light of civilization against whatever threatened to extinguish it. "Thank you, Chief," Gray said suddenly, his words carrying perfect human pronunciation despite his alien vocal cords. Sarah nearly fell over in shock. In all their months together through battles and quiet moments, Gray had never spoken in human language. His communication had always been empathic, sharing concepts and images through their bond. "You can talk?" she managed to say. Gray's blue eyes sparkled with what was unmistakably humor. "Always could. Learning your speech patterns was part of the enhancement protocol. But pack bonds are built through action, not words. Had to earn trust first." Sarah laughed, a sound that carried relief and joy and a dozen other emotions. "All this time, and you were just waiting for the right moment?" "Right moment is when Pack knows it can trust Alpha completely," Gray replied, his grammar still stilted but his meaning clear. "War's over. New challenges coming. Pack needs to know Alpha will speak for all, not just humans." The profundity of the statement hit Sarah like a physical blow. Gray hadn't just learned human speech. He had been testing her, making sure she would put the needs of the network above the interests of her own species. And apparently, she had passed. "The network chose well," Kyriel said from behind them, its harmonic voice carrying approval. "Few beings can inspire such loyalty across species boundaries. Fewer still can earn the trust of apex predators modified by builder technology." Sarah turned to face the firstborn, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a familiar cloak. "What are my orders?" "There are no orders anymore," Kyriel replied. "Only choices. The network functions through consensus and cooperation, not hierarchy and command. Your role is to facilitate, to coordinate, to ensure that the bonds forged in this war remain strong in the peace that follows." As if summoned by the conversation, other senior officers began filtering onto the observation deck. Torres brought tactical reports from across the liberation zones. Martinez carried his latest findings on builder technology integration. Reed presented communication intercepts from species eager to join the network. They were all looking to her for guidance, Sarah realized. Not because she outranked them, but because she had proven herself in the crucible of interstellar war. She was no longer just a human commander. She was a Guardian Prime, coordinator of an alliance that spanned the galaxy. "All right, people," she said, falling into the familiar rhythm of command. "Let's get to work. We've got a galaxy to rebuild." Gray howled his agreement, and across the network the response was immediate and overwhelming. Millions of voices raised in harmony, each unique but united in purpose, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might throw at them. The Age of the Guardians had begun, and at its heart stood a human commander and an enhanced wolf, bound by trust and tempered by war, leading an alliance that would reshape the very nature of civilization among the stars. In the end, it had all started with a simple choice: to extend a hand in friendship to a being that could have been an enemy. That single act of trust had changed everything, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures could echo across the galaxy and transform the fate of countless worlds. The future was vast and uncertain, full of wonders and terrors beyond imagination. But whatever came next, they would face it together, as a pack, as a network, as guardians of the light that made life worth protecting. And in the depths of space, ancient evils stirred and took notice, sensing the emergence of a new power that might finally be strong enough to stand against the darkness that hungered for the end of all things. The real war was about to begin,